I had the privilege to play a 2473 rated opponent in this 5-minute blitz game. I opened d4, d6, unusual move already. I contemplated my options. I played c4. I wanted to play a queen spawn opening. I could have played e4, which might transpose into the Pirt's defense, but I played c4. Now, here black can transpose into many different openings. He can play g6 and transpose into the modern defense, or even a King's Indian defense. But apparently, looking at the database on Lichess, the most popular move in this position for black is e5, and that's what my opponent played. And this is called the rat defense. A pretty appropriate opening to be playing while my family is downstairs watching the presidential debate. Okay, I weighed my options. I have seen this rat defense before, and I have tried d takes e5 and have not scored well with it. It looks good superficially, but apparently black is solid in this position, and it's very hard to get an opening advantage. The engine says black is already equalized. Okay, so instead I played the mainline move, knight to f3. Okay, just guarding my d-pawn, attacking e5 again. Then the normal move here is e4, hitting the knight, and the main line continues knight g5. And there's a couple of ways black can defend the e-pawn. You can do it with pieces, or you can do it with a pawn. And the main line continues f5, and then knight c3. Bishop e7 attacks the knight on g5, which normally retreats to h3. But checking with the engine, I found this very interesting move, knight d5, leaving the knight on g5 en prise. And the point is, if black captures it, we're going to capture back, and black probably doesn't want to take that bishop because of knight takes c7. Okay, so pretty interesting line, but the game continued knight c6. Okay, now I wish I could take this move back. I played e4. I took the opportunity, since I am guarding my d-pawn, I took the opportunity to stop my opponent from playing e4 and driving my knight to an unfortunate square. But I think I should have played knight c3, developing a piece, keeping this square open. It also stops the pawn advance. Okay, but e4 isn't terrible. It's okay. E takes d4, I think that's probably conceding too much. I don't know if black had to give up the center like that. Knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3. This reminds me of a Sicilian defense with a Marazzi bind. But of course it's nowhere near Sicilian because that pawn hasn't moved. Okay, now g6. Probably a good idea to fianchetto this bishop, especially against a lower rated player. When there's a piece sitting on d4, there's going to be tactics in the air along this diagonal. So let's see if I crack under the pressure. So bishop e2, just developing, getting ready to castle, defending the g4 square. Bishop g7. I played bishop e3 here, maybe more ambitious is bishop g5, pinning the knight. But I played bishop e3. I want to guard this again. There are two pieces pressuring my d4 knight. Okay, there are tactics if this knight moves. All right, my opponent castled. I castled. And then a pretty weak move, I thought, bishop d7. Okay, not very ambitious to put the bishop on the d7 square. I continued queen d2, connecting the rooks, possibly eyeing bishop to h6 and removing that dark squared defender of the king side. Rook to e8, when you slide the rook over like that, when you slide the rook over like that, you're giving yourself the opportunity to keep your bishop, because if I play bishop in a position like that, it can always retreat and the rook is not being hit on f8. Okay, but when the rook came to e8, he's now attacking my e4 pawn, so I defend it with f3. So far my opening looks really good. I like this position. I have more space. My pieces are developed harmoniously. The only piece I don't like so much is my light squared bishop. It's behind this massive light squared pawns. But the engine agrees and likes my position, says I have about a plus 0.8 advantage. So maybe the rat defense isn't so good. Okay. Then my opponent plays a really strange move, a6. I don't know the point of that, maybe keeping the knight off of b5, or he's probably preparing the pawn push to b5, which you can't do yet. I have like 4 pieces pointed at b5, but we'll see. Now here I could not think of a plan. I'm still really slow, especially at positional ideas. I played pretty pointless knight to d5, attempting to trade that knight on f6, maybe start a kingside attack. I think a better idea is to try to expand on the queen side. So something like knight takes c6 here, getting rid of the knight which was defending the b4 square, and then bishop takes c6, and then rook a c1, getting the rook off of this diagonal. It's dangerous to leave it there if you're going to be pushing the b pawn. Maybe queen e7 and b4. So expanding on the queen side was one idea, and then I have possibilities of pushing to c5 or even b5 in that position. But I just played knight d5. Rook b8, so my opponent apparently does want to expand on the queen side. And here I made a big mistake, I think. Bishop g5. Probably should have followed through with this idea of expanding on the queen side. b4 is defended twice here. Or I could have pushed my rook over first and then put my rook on one of these squares and then pushed to b4. But I played bishop to g5. I think that's just an oversight, a mistake, because this bishop is needed to defend b4 and this diagonal here, d4 and this diagonal. I can't forget that that knight and that bishop are both pressuring d4, so there are possible tactics here. I thought it was safe, though, to be pinning this knight to the queen, but I just didn't analyze everything after knight takes knight. Good idea to draw my queen to the center of the board, right in line with the bishop, and then knight takes d5. Okay, explosive move. Both queens are attacked. Knight's en prise on d5. And I'm just miscalculated the possibilities here. Should be faster and more accurate at my calculations. I don't know how to practice that. But I made a mistake. I played queen takes g7 check to trade queens. But the engine tells me my best try was queen takes d5, which does defend the bishop. Okay, so material is currently equal. However, black could have went up a pawn by attacking my queen, and the only square I can go to keep in contact with that bishop is d2. Okay, but then the queen can come to b6 with check, and that pawn is going to fall. We have a bishop and a queen pointed at it. So I think that was a better idea. Okay. Of course, I can't take the queen here. He'll take my queen with check, and he'll have 3 minor pieces, and I'll have 2, and I'll be in check. It's terrible. Okay, but I took on g7. He took back. I took the queen. Material is equal. Both minor pieces are under attack. But of course, I should have analyzed the move knight f4. So when 2 minor pieces are under attack like that, when you each have a piece under attack, If you can move yours to safety while attacking another piece, then that's good, because now I have two pieces under attack, and that's where I resigned. Probably a bit premature to resign. I could have gotten 2 pawns for my piece. The engine gives this position a negative 1.6 score. So I could have tried bishop takes c7, but then knight takes e2 check, king moves, rook moves and attacks the bishop, and then I get another pawn, and then the knight moves to safety, and then probably b3. So I could have went into this position, a piece down for 2 pawns, and the game would have went on, but I think it's more appropriate to resign against this very high rated player. All right, thanks for watching the video.